to be?
Engineer.
Engineer. What do you want to be?
Software engineer.
Software engineer. What do you want to be?
Indian Foreign Service.
Indian Foreign Service. What do you want to be?
I want to be a doctor.
You want to be a doctor. Great.
Okay, if you did that in Tolleson, or if you did that in downtown Scottsdale, and you had a microphone, Keith Ballard, and you said, what do you want to be? What would your answer be from American students?
Well, Pat, I'd hate to tell you, I've actually done it. And it's usually something like, well, I don't know, or I want to make a lot of money, or I want to be a professional baseball player or rapper. Occasionally you'll get the lawyer or doctor, but I'm telling you, there's a clear difference of what's going on here in America and on the other side of the world, specifically Asia.
This may not be a surprise to you. You may have seen the same research, but I couldn't believe it. A couple of years ago, somebody did a research, and there were thousands of students across the country that were, I think, between 17 and 20. And they said, okay, make a choice. United States Senator, very successful industrialist, teacher, or assistant to a celebrity. And something like 65% of the people said assistant to a celebrity. Not even a celebrity.
Right, and here in the United States, I mean, a teacher, relatively speaking, is a pretty low status job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you ask kids what they want to be, it's very difficult to find them saying that they want to be teachers. I did that in the video you just showed was India, and I asked like 600 kids this question, and I made a compilation of that on my YouTube site. But in China, the answers are different. They're much more geared toward, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher. Because the Confucius doctrine is so implanted, it's so ingrained in the Chinese psychic. Even though Confucius, was, early 479 AD, it's still highly ingrained, and it's in the Chinese psyche. It's like not only is education the only way, but it's the only way up now.
Keith Ballard is 2003 Milken U.S. National Educator, and I congratulate you for the awards and the recognition that you've gotten. But right now, I'd like to recognize American education for where it is internationally. Why are we inferior? And now, let's not talk about the rest of the world. Let's talk about China and India.
Sure. Well, it's specifically China, because we know what a guerrilla and competitor they are, and how much their economy is going to grow, not presently, but in the future. But just to give you a quick idea, this is the analogy that I use to Americans. The Chinese public educational system is so good, it's something like the NFL, a National Football League, whereas here in the United States, unfortunately, sorry to say, as an American public educator, we're playing no better than high school football. Now,
were we ever an NFL level?
We were early on, but what's happened is the rest of the world's caught up with us, in many cases surpassed us. The problem is, Pat, here in the United States, we talk about so many things. We know we have this problem. We talk. But when we usually give solutions, they're Band-Aid solutions. And, the rest of the world, I mean, China's, man, boy, they're moving ahead almost in every direction. But let me give you an idea of the differences. In China, they go to school 230 days a year. Here in Arizona is about 180. In China, they're doing about 3.5 hours more per day per schooling. Now, and that doesn't, forget about, that's up to junior high. At the high school, my gosh, some of the schools over there start at 6 in the morning and they end at 10 at night. I was in them. Now, I'm not saying that's the right way, but that's the competition, Pat. Their curriculum in China and India is basically based in science and math, so it's very hard, and it's much more rigor, a lot more rigor in their curriculum.
Well, the schools are more authoritarian because the entire structure of the country is more authoritarian.
Well, they do, but South Korea is very democratic, and Japan's rather democratic.
Well, you list Singapore. I've been in Singapore.
Sure.
And it is, to me, it was just this eye-opening, extraordinary, small island nation that was like Paris in Asia. It was amazing.
Just to give you an idea, this was a poor fishing country back in the 70s. Yeah, I mean, impoverished, very much impoverished, poor fishing country. And they knew, the government knew that the only way they were going to drive this thing and rise out of poverty was through a state-of-the-art public education system. And now Singapore is in the top 5 public educational systems in the world. But Pat, let me give you an idea on the other things I was talking about. And I have to say one more time, the difference in the discipline in China and India. You know, I was in 22 schools over there. Some of the schools had up to 4,000 kids. I never once saw a discipline problem or met an unruly student. Now, could we say that same thing about here in a United States public school? Absolutely
Well,
not.
but the level of freedom, regardless. I mean, obviously there are downsides to freedom every single time, and the freedom of expression there and
Sure.
the freedom of expression here is.
But the problem is, Pat, here, it's come to the point of ridiculousness here in the United States. I mean, yes, maybe they're over here on this spectrum, but we've gone so far on this. And remember, business has choices, and business is exercising those choices. And more, business is exercising those choices in those two little small countries that make up 40% of the world, called China and India.
Do you want us to be like them?
Well, I want our kids to be able to be competitive, and I want them to compete for those high-tech, high-paid, high-skilled jobs. And we're not doing a very good job of
But
that.
aren't those kids, when they get to college age, coming here?
Some of them are. I mean, the ones that have the money, they do want to come here.
Why?
Why? Because, Pat, we still have the best colleges in the world. We still have the best college university system in the world. The problem is our K through 12 system is so incredibly broken that it's horrible.
Okay, fix it.
Okay. One last thing, if I can say this. One last thing. With that Chinese public educational system, here's what it's going to look like in the end. They're going to be 6 years ahead academically by age 18 if you go by Arizona school time. So that's an enormous. So how do we fix it? Well, number one, we need to do at least a month more in terms of school time. At least a month just to be competitive with Asia. I mean, South Korea is one of the lowest in terms of days per year, and they're doing 205 days. We're doing 180.
You know who's going to bitch and complain about that? Not the kids as much as their parents. The parents are going to say, well, wait a minute, we have this vacation planned and we're going to be doing this.
You're right. Pat, we've got two crises here. Number one's a government crisis, that we haven't done the proper things to make us competitive. And one of those other things that we need to talk about is vocational education, because we have really messed up in that. In China, is about 50% of their kids go in vocational tracks. So when they
what?
You name it, they do it over there. Computer repair, jewelry inspection, auto mechanic, aviation mechanic. If it's something out there in society, they're doing it. I know I was in those schools, and they're doing it incredibly. I mean, they're giving their kids options. I call the Chinese public educational system the most compassionate educational system. And a lot of people look at me and they go, what? Why would you say that? Well, because they push their kids relentlessly to meet the hard and cruel world of the future. They treat their teachers incredibly. You know, a full-time teacher in China only teaches 2 45-minute classes a day. The rest of the time, they have time for preparation. And what do? They recognize that only so many kids are going to go to college, so about 50% of their kids are university track, and about 50% of their kids are vocationally tracked.
We have 15 seconds. Tell everybody right now, everybody that has a kid, what they can do individually to at least begin some kind of a change.
You better push your kids relentlessly. If you truly love your kids, you will give them the best possible education, tough love, push them relentlessly, no worse than A's and B's, and probably more like A's to be competitive in this world for those high-end, high-tech, high-skilled jobs.
So says Keith Ballard, and he knows what he's talking about. He's passionate about it. Pat McMahon's solution, send your kid to China. This is Pat McMahon standing by the way, for a real major scientific breakthrough that we're going to show you here on the Morning Scramble.